The galaxy stood on the precipice of annihilation. The replicators, a seemingly endless horde of self-replicating machines, threatened to consume all organic life in their relentless expansion. Desperation, not unity, had forged an uneasy alliance of beleaguered species, a fragile coalition held together by necessity rather than shared purpose. At the apex of this power structure stood the Primordials, the original architects of the replicators. Despite the rightful accusations against them, their mastery of weaponry and ship design had proven invaluable in the few victories against the machines. Without their technological superiority, organic life might already be extinct. In stark contrast, the humans were a species barely considered sapient by many. They had stumbled into the Galactic War before even mastering faster-than-light travel. Their inclusion in the Alliance met with fierce resistance. Many argued that protecting their fledgling world with orbital defenses was a costly investment for negligible military gain, for their primitive weapons were insufficient for this impossible war. As a species, they were seen more as a liability than an asset. Exor, the Coalition's chief weapons engineer, held a dim view of both the Primordials and the humans. While he recognized the necessity of assisting humanity against a threat not of their making, he was deeply skeptical of their wartime capabilities. His disdain for human involvement was so profound that he'd alienate allies to keep them out of the manufacturing process. Exor feared the immaturity and limited knowledge of this young species would compromise the quality of any component they touched, transforming them from potential allies into a hindrance to the war effort. A former colleague would later recount. The mandate to provide the humans with a token task was a burden Exor struggled to bear. His predicament was clear. Find a project so unimportant that failure would have little consequence, then assign it to the human engineers. With this distraction removed, he could finally dedicate his full attention to the critical work ahead, coordinating the teams from the species that mattered for the great battle that would eventually decide the fate of biological life. Exor's initial meeting with the human military engineering team was held aboard a primordial vessel, far from the war's front lines. As he approached the conference room, his servants delivered the unwelcome news. The language translator was inadequately trained in both human and his species' tongues. His irritation escalated when he was presented with a device capable of translating only one word at a time, which would somehow transform a useless meeting into something even more unpleasant. His temper already frayed, Exor stormed into the conference room, ignoring the humans entirely. When his gaze finally landed on them, a wave of disbelief washed over him. Their soft skin, rounded ears, and complete lack of claws or fangs spoke volumes. A silent question formed in his mind. Could creatures so seemingly delicate be capable of the violence necessary for this war? The question was dismissed as quickly as it had formed. It mattered little in the grand scheme. The task he would assign them was trivial, child's play. With sufficient training, even if they failed, any other race could accomplish it in a matter of days. Attention, Exor commanded, his voice echoing in the chamber. The word was instantly translated and displayed on the screen before the humans, a stark, solitary proclamation that captured their full attention. The stunned silence that followed his command offered a brief respite, and with a trace of regained composure, Exor attempted a more diplomatic approach. He issued a few single-word commands, which the translator rendered into longer, more convoluted phrases for the humans. Translator malfunction. Patience required. Information later solved independently. Exor intended to convey, but his composure faltered as he observed several human engineers producing notebooks. Did their limited memory necessitate such primitive recording methods for mere 4 words? The label of barely sapient resurfaced in his mind. A flicker of relief washed over Exor when he noted that not all humans resorted to this seemingly archaic practice. Once the humans had concluded their note-taking, Exor proceeded with the core of the meeting. He handed the translator to his servants, instructing them to translate only the essential points of his speech, to give the humans some context. Exor turned to the drawing board, his explanation beginning with a fundamental concept. Our galaxy-spanning fleet relies heavily on antimatter. This volatile substance powers the core of our hyperdrives, enabling faster-than-light travel between strategic points. As Exor sketched a starship on the board, his servant employed the translator, conveying a solitary term to the human engineers: antimatter. The humans responded with a chorus of nodding heads and scribbling hands. They had barely begun, yet they were already taking copious notes. The absurdity of the situation deepened Exor's skepticism about their intelligence. Ignoring their apparent eagerness, Exor returned to the drawing board. The task I have chosen for the human contribution is critical to the Coalition's war efforts, he declared. His servants couldn't conceal their mockery as he meticulously sketched a basic component of the hyperdrive core. This is an antimatter injector. Its function is to maintain a constant power supply to the core, ensuring uninterrupted hyperdrive operation. In essence, it just throws fuel into the core. Suppressing a smirk under Exor's stern gaze, the servant responsible for the translation conveyed a single concise term to the human engineers: throw. Exor was caught off guard by the humans' reaction. Instead of their usual note-taking and nods, they froze, their eyes wide with a strange, intense glint. A heavy silence filled the room, which he and his servants interpreted as a sign that the humans had not comprehended anything he had said. This was entirely understandable given the lack of a proper translation. Recognizing their reaction as puzzlement, Exor offered a conciliatory tone. The war was not their burden, and the success of this project was ultimately inconsequential. As long as they didn't squander precious time, he would gladly inflate the importance of their contribution. The blueprints of the entire task will be provided. Your task is merely to produce the injector, a simple metal component wrapped in a few wires to generate the magnetic field. Even with your limited industrial capabilities, you should be able to manufacture millions of these in a few cycles. It's an easy task. This time, the servant didn't smirk and straightforwardly translated a single word: easy. A murmur arose from the human group, their hands reaching for their heads and chins in contemplation. Exor and his servants were perplexed by this sudden burst of communication. Why had they waited until now, after his reassurances, to begin discussing the matter? Assuming the translation issue had caused this behavior and that it would be resolved once the humans received the full transcript, Exor offered a final cautionary note. The task is straightforward, and I expect your species to handle it. However, it's critical to approach this with the utmost seriousness. A defective injector can lead to catastrophic failures, including explosions. The servant understood the task at hand and carefully selected the final words to provide a hint of context to the humans. Explosion. A flurry of conversation erupted among the humans, quickly subsiding. Exor assumed the meeting was concluded. Unsure of human customs, he turned to leave, but as he did, every engineer raised a hand to their forehead in a gesture he couldn't comprehend. As Exor departed the conference room, no one realized the gravity of what had just transpired. From the human perspective, the message was clear enough. Antimatter. Throw. Easy. Explosion. The information was sufficient, and they saw no need to request a recording of the meeting. Their minds had already filled in the gaps in the translation. Exor's focus was consumed by the war after the meeting. He thought of the humans only sporadically, typically when the need for injectors arose. Assuming their project was behind schedule, he would then assign the task to another species. This pattern persisted for countless cycles, until the ominous news arrived. The replicators were massing their forces near the Coalition's vital mining and manufacturing hubs. The shock waves of this intelligence reverberated through the primordial homeworlds, the epicenter of the war effort. Exor, along with countless captains, generals, and weapons experts, was summoned to the War Council. Days of intense deliberation and complex simulations painted a grim picture. The loss of any of these worlds would be catastrophic. Without the manufacturing or mining capabilities concentrated there, victory against the replicators would be impossible. Any subsequent actions would merely postpone the inevitable defeat. A unanimous decision, was reached to concentrate the Coalition's forces on defending those critical worlds. Orders were issued for a full-scale mobilization, demanding that all fleets across the galaxy converge on the primordial homeworlds for a final desperate stand. Ships massed in 3 colossal formations, forming a near-impenetrable wall in space, a dynamic defensive swarm poised to charge, reposition, or react in any manner required to repel the replicator onslaught. Exor's role in this impending cataclysm was that of a distant observer, removed from the front lines. Fury trapped in the monotony of theoretical warfare, boredom gnawed at him. Victory would bring invaluable insights for future conflicts, but defeat would likely prompt him to initiate self-destruction, a grim escape from inevitable suffering. This was a battle for the very soul of existence. With the replicators strangely absent, boredom crept into Exor's mind, which wandered through the past and future, occasionally returning to the humans. Their token project had vanished without a trace. Rumors whispered about their failure to deliver, or worse, their abandonment of the task entirely. Exor believed in a variation of the prevailing theories. He doubted the humans had simply given up the task or missed the deadline. Instead, he thought they'd realized the futility of their efforts and lost motivation to try. If even more capable species had succumbed to such discouragement, why not a fledgling race like humanity? Exor was mid-argument, trying to convince Laser and his uninterested crew of his theory, when the bridge's bright lights dimmed, replaced by a stark red glow. An urgent message flashed across the main holopad. Unusual activity detected at the front line. The antimatter injector task. The crew sprang into action, their focus not on weapons or tactics, but on gathering data. As individual control panels illuminated, the main holopad came to life, displaying the 3 defensive formations as colossal walls against a single monolithic replicator spearhead. The enemy was converging on a central point, their intent clear and ominous: to breach the defenses and reach the world behind. Their formation is predictable. Laser, the sublight propulsion specialist, broke the silence. Mindless machines though they may be, their programming has adapted to our tactics. They've concentrated their forces to exploit our dispersed defenses. Exor, whose tireless efforts had doubled ship ammunition and laser power in anticipation of precisely this scenario, remained calm. Each of our ships can destroy multiple enemies. Their formation will hold until reinforcements arrive. If the battle unfolded as predicted by simulations, Exor anticipated that only the planetary hyperdrive suppressors would be activated, and the barrier in space would be enough to contain the enemy. Coalition ships were built for quality, not quantity, and early battle data supported this prediction. The replicator spearhead slammed into the Coalition's central formation with the expected ferocity. For every Allied ship lost, at least 8 enemy vessels were destroyed. The attrition rate was promising. Victory seemed imminent. The seasoned crew, their holopads alight with data collection, were utterly absorbed by the spectacle. Then came the unexpected. Thousands of replicator signatures burst into existence beyond the hyperdrive suppressor's reach. Instead of reinforcing the main force, these new arrivals veered towards the incoming reinforcements. The crew's focus snapped to the main holopad, where chaos now reigned supreme. The new enemy force wouldn't indefinitely delay the reinforcements, but arrival times were already being pushed back by several minutes. Exor was frozen in place, stunned by this unexpected tactical maneuver from a foe typically reliant on nothing besides numbers. The replicator spearhead relentlessly pounded the same point, the defensive wall crumbling at an alarming rate. With no reinforcements promptly ready, soon the planet would be stripped of its protective shield, forced to rely solely on orbital and ground-based lasers. This would be a desperate gamble against overwhelming odds, a measure that could only buy precious moments before the inevitable onslaught. Exor's voice cut through the tense silence. What are our chances? His question was directed at the crew, who had paused their data collection to watch the battle. Laser was the only one who returned to his holopad to run the simulations. His figure was marked by a profound sadness as he announced, "No chance of success." A heavy silence descended upon the bridge. Exor's mind raced, caught in a web of bitter irony. The Primordials, the creators of the replicators, were now on the brink of losing one of their most vital worlds. This would be a catastrophic loss for all sentient life, not just their own species. Even the humans, still in their infancy and hitting themselves in the heads with sticks when the replicators were born, would ultimately suffer the consequences. The galaxy, once teeming with life, was on the precipice of becoming a machine-dominated wasteland. Exor was jolted from his reverie by a crew member's voice. New hyperspace signatures detected. "Sir." Leaning forward, his eyes fixed on a distant corner of the holopad, the crew member announced, "They're marked as allies, sir. They're hailing everyone." Exor's sarcasm dripped as he responded, "Don't tell me it's more enemy reinforcements. That would truly be a catastrophe." The reply came instantly, "They're the humans, sir." Exor's sarcasm died a deep, nonverbal response. A jarring zoom into a seemingly empty expanse of space eclipsed the battlefield. When the object came into focus, Exor was frozen in profound disbelief. It was a structure, colossal and unfamiliar, that defied any categorization he could conjure. Unfolding before them on the main view screen was a monstrosity of cosmic proportions, as long as a planet. It was undeniably an artificial construct, yet bore no resemblance to any known vessel. It was a grotesque chain of metallic rings, each as wide as a metropolis, floating in space with primitive propulsion that aligned the centers of those rings in a perfect and vast line. This alien behemoth had materialized from hyperspace, leaving Exor and his crew in a state of shock, unable to react. "In the name of the void, what is that?" Blazor broke the silence. The memory of the humans, once labeled barely sapient, flashed through Exor's mind. His intellect struggled to comprehend the alien structure. Then one of the ship designers offered his opinion. "Look at the ring at the front. It resembles the nozzle of an antimatter injector." The comparison was undeniable, and Exor saw the resemblance to an antimatter injector. But injectors always came in pairs. This couldn't be the source of human inspiration for such a colossal structure. His certainty was short-lived as the same crew member's voice cut through his thoughts. "Sensors detect a similar structure on the opposite side of the battlefield, sir." Exor's gaze swept across the bridge, monitoring the confusion etched on every face. Desperate for answers, he demanded, "Tell me everything you know about that structure." The first two reports were terse and uninformative. "The rings are freezing cold, invisible to infrared," one officer stated. "They're constantly adjusting their position," added another. Then Laser's voice cut through the growing tension. "What's that sphere the human ship is placing at the rear of the formation? Could that be antimatter?" With a skeptical expression, Exor attempted to measure the sphere. When he confirmed it was as big as an asteroid, a hint of concern appeared inside him. But he still did nothing, refusing to do anything besides observing. It wasn't until the first ring sacrificed itself in a fiery explosion, ejected at high speed to propel the sphere, that a chilling possibility took hold of Exor's mind. As the chain reaction unfolded, rings igniting and increasing the speed of the sphere at the cost of being ejected from the structure, he issued a desperate order. "Calculate the final speed. Do it fast." A collective gasp swept through the crew as they exchanged stunned glances. Finally, one voice did the math and broke the silence. "A significant fraction of light speed, sir." "No, no, 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 no," Exor panicked. "Hyperspace now. No delays." Exor was no captain. His expertise lay in the intricacies of ship design rather than the art of war. Yet a simple order was enough to propel them away from the cosmic cataclysm. A brief plunge into hyperspace was followed by an agonizing wait, suspended in the void, expectant observers counting down the moments until the blinding light of the collision reached their distant vantage point. Only then could they hope to glimpse the outcome of this mad, cosmically sized contraption. Anxiety had reached its peak when finally it happened, and they experienced more than just a glimpse. For an infinitesimal instant, too fast for Exor or any other life form to notice, the universe was a single blinding point of light, brighter than a supernova, hotter than a dying star. It was a cosmic scream, a primal brightness of creation and destruction. The blinding light faded as quickly as it had appeared, leaving in its wake a ship bathed in silence and darkness. Optic sensors were fried, and a host of other external systems had been obliterated in the blink of an eye. The only evidence of the cataclysmic event was the ship's hull, glowing ominously warm as it absorbed the residual energy of the cosmic collision. If this was the devastation wrought upon a solitary ship at such a distance, what horrors had befallen the battlefield, the replicators, the defenders, the planet itself? The crazy humans, their fates were all a speculation that no member of the crew dared to voice. Yet a chilling truth underlay their silence. Thanks to the humans, anything caught in the blast radius would have been reduced to its constituent particles, vaporized in an instant. The devastating weapon. It took tremendous effort for Exor and his crew to restore their ship to operational status, putting their knowledge into practice in ways they rarely did. Upon their return to a coalition stronghold, they were met with a cacophony of disarray in a cavernous hall, teeming with more alien life forms than Exor had ever imagined. Amidst the chaos, Exor learned the grim fate of the coalition fleet. The humans, the unlikely architects of such devastation, had sent a desperate warning to evacuate the battlefield before the cataclysmic collision. Tragically, only a fraction had heeded their advice. The coalition fleet had been decimated, but so had the replicator swarm. This was the sole piece of information gleaned from a survivor who had returned to the battlefield. The once vital primordial world, the intended focus of the defense, had been utterly ravaged. Its autonomous industrial heart was obliterated, and the planet itself was rendered uninhabitable for the foreseeable future. A desolate landscape of molten machinery was all that remained. Fear seized Exor as he contemplated the planet's critical role. His mind immediately turned to the humans, their actions suddenly eclipsing even his disdain for the primordials. The coalition's industrial chain was broken, and while the replicators would undoubtedly replenish their forces faster, a second wave of attack was inevitable. In that moment, Exor yearned to confront the humans, to unleash the full force of his contempt for their reckless actions. This desire for confrontation would soon be granted. Amidst the chaos of the crowded hall, Exor learned that both humans and primordials had been summoned to account for their actions. Calculations revealed an impossible truth. The humans should not have possessed such a vast quantity of antimatter. The only logical explanation was that the primordials had been the source. The primordials' arrival offered the first clue. Typically, these towering, slender aliens exuded an aura of confidence, unfazed by criticism. Their demeanor was one of assuredness, and they often commanded center stage. Yet on this occasion, their heads were bowed, their gazes fixed on the floor. The once proud primordials had retreated into themselves, offering no explanations, no justifications. Exor exchanged a knowing look with Lezer. Their collective memory couldn't recall a single instance of such subdued primordial behavior. Where were the tirades about their ravaged planet? The accusatory fingers pointed at the humans. The condescending dismissal of the rest of the coalition as incompetent. Confusion reigned as Exor pondered the primordials' unusual demeanor. Then the humans arrived, their entrance commanding immediate attention as they moved toward the center of the crowded hall. Exor could only follow their progress with his gaze, the dense crowd preventing him from moving closer. The human delegation was a small group of 2 males and 1 female, but it was a short, dark-cloaked man who took the podium. His voice, filtered through the translator, was heavy with both sorrow and hope. "We stand before you today, humbled by our losses, but filled with optimism for the future." The human paused, surveying the gathered crowd. On behalf of the entire Galactic Alliance, I declare Operation Second Sun a complete success. The replicator threat has been eradicated. Only scattered groups remain, waiting to be neutralized by our combined forces. Disbelief colored Exor's thoughts. The battlefield had been a mere snapshot of the galactic conflict. The replicators possessed countless industrial worlds, factories churning out endless copies to swell their ranks. How could they have been completely annihilated? A towering alien with an oversized head cut through the stunned silence. "This is impossible," it shouted. "Humans may be ignorant of this, but today's battle was merely a skirmish. The replicators always shield their industrial worlds with overwhelming force. You've only prolonged our agony, condemning us to a longer war." Unperturbed by the accusation, the human spokesperson continued. "Our operation was far more extensive than the main battlefield. Simultaneous attacks were launched against every known replicator stronghold. The outcome was the total annihilation of all targets." A heavy silence descended upon the hall. Such a declaration of total annihilation, even from a powerful species, would have been met with derision. Yet these words were uttered by a human, a species that wasn't even expected to make any contribution, and they were met with a chilling seriousness, a profound sense of dread. The same oversized alien broke the stunned silence. How could the new species create a weapon of such devastating power? "It's impossible. It defies all logic." The human delegation exchanged solemn glances before their spokesperson resumed. "Our engineers had significant doubts about the feasibility of this plan, yet we owe a debt of gratitude to Exor. His single word of reassurance that it would be easy ignited a spark in our brightest minds. Inspired by the confidence of such a prominent figure, they dedicated themselves tirelessly to overcoming every obstacle." Exor, previously lost in the crowd, now found himself the unwilling center of attention. The shock that rippled through him wasn't due to the sudden spotlight, but to the incomprehensible words he had just heard. His mind raced desperately, searching for a shred of understanding. Only a vague memory of his first and only meeting with the humans serving as a clue. Deflecting the growing attention, Exor offered, "I believe my role in this was inconsequential." The human delegation's eyes widened in disbelief. "Inconsequential? Now that the war is over, there's no need for modesty. Your order for us to solve independently was the catalyst for our surprise attack, and those weapon schematics you provided were invaluable." Can you believe he explained the concept of an antimatter coil guide in just 4 words? "Exor was instrumental to our victory," the human spokesperson continued. "Without him, we might not be here today." A sea of curious eyes converged on Exor, isolating him and his crew in a vortex. The crowd parted like water before them, shock waves rippling through the hall. Exor struggled to process the human's words amidst the growing cacophony, his mind desperately dredging up memories of their initial encounter. Then the realization hit Exor like a physical blow. This monumental misunderstanding had originated with his simple request for an antimatter injector. How a species he had once dismissed as primitive could transform such a basic component into a galaxy-altering weapon within a mere handful of cycles was beyond comprehension. He had asked for a hyperdrive part and received a war-winning device. Irony, bitter and cruel, was the only word that came to his mind. All the while he and his crew had scoffed at the humans' supposed incompetence, yet this new understanding didn't quell this thirst for answers. "But how did your species acquire the antimatter?" Exor pressed. "And what about the hyperdrive? Cause for that colossal device. Your kind wasn't supposed to have access to such technology." A wave of discomfort washed over the human delegation. Some averted their gaze, while others pretended not to hear. The translator seemed to falter momentarily. Finally, the spokesman cleared his throat. "You provided the core schematics, it's true. But replicating it was a monumental challenge. Countless explosions, failed prototypes, and immense financial burdens later, we managed a breakthrough. However, producing enough coils in time was impossible, so we applied the same principles to the antimatter issue." Another voice interjected. In short, we resorted to piracy and stole the components directly from the primordials. Exor's gaze flickered toward the towering primordials, his mind short-circuiting. A collective roar erupted from the crowd, a tidal wave of pent-up relief and triumph. The puzzle of the primordials' subdued demeanor fell into place. With the replicator threat neutralized, the sole reason for other species tolerating the creators of their torment was obsolete. Their fate now rested in the hands of others, even the once lowly species of the Alliance, like the humans who held sway over their destiny. There was no cause for celebration, no grounds for complaint. Their worlds were lost, their technology and materials plundered, yet they stood as silent spectators to their downfall. Exor stood apart from the jubilant crowd, a bitter taste lingering. This victory belonged solely to the humans, a fact obscured by a veil of ignorance. Could he end this illusion, reveal the truth, or would silence be the wiser path? For now, Exor was trapped in a gilded cage of undeserved praise, a prisoner of his own silence. Perhaps silence was the safest course. If he kept his mouth shut, he might even gain something good, and life would return to some semblance of normalcy. The aftermath, and Exor's dilemma. A prolonged era of unprecedented peace and prosperity descended upon the galaxy in the wake of the Coalition's dissolution and the Replicator's annihilation. The specter of war receded into the not-so-distant past. Trade flourished, knowledge was shared freely, and a spirit of cooperation permeated the cosmos. As Exor had astutely predicted, his calculated silence had propelled him into the upper echelons of galactic society. No longer a mere cog in the war machine, he was now a pivotal figure, his counsel sought after by leaders from countless worlds. Exor stood in the aftermath of the galactic upheaval, contemplating the fragility of alliances and the weight of his silence. With the collapse of the old order, a new epoch dawned, and the formation of a unified federation became the paramount goal for all races. Exor, with his unique blend of technical expertise and strategic insight, found himself at the heart of these deliberations. The work sometimes gave respite to the darkness in his past, his knowledge of the replicators, their tactics, and their technology invaluable as the fledgling Federation sought to establish a robust control system capable of preventing the creation of any future threats. The scars of war were still fresh for most species, but those who had escaped relatively unscathed were idolized. They were seen as a beacon of hope and resilience in the face of adversity, the ones who had made a life of peace possible for all life forms, sapient or not. Humanity ascended to a position of unparalleled reverence in the new galactic order. Their decision to spare the primordials was hailed as proof of their nobility. Only Exor's meteoric rise to prominence could rival their exalted status, his influence spanning countless species, his name remembered even by those who didn't have mouths to create sound. Despite his elevated status, Exor lived in the shadow of a profound unease. The pervasive belief that he and his team were the sole architects of the war-ending weapon was a constant source of torment. The root of his distress was not the undeserved acclaim, but the weight of the truth he carried. Exor had replayed the recording of his first meeting with the humans countless times, dissecting every moment with clinical precision. The individual voices of the human engineers had been isolated, translated into his language, and analyzed meticulously. Even the cryptic scrolls in their notebooks, once dismissed with disdainful indifference, had been deciphered. What he found was deeply concerning. At least 3 engineers had sketched designs bearing a striking resemblance to the war-winning weapon, inspired solely by the words antimatter and throw. Moreover, the group had conceived numerous other unrealized weapon concepts. The potential of such unbridled human ingenuity filled Exor with profound existential dread. The burden of knowledge was a heavy one. Every interview in which a human humorously pondered a scenario where their species created something akin to the replicators was a stark reminder of the terrifying truth he harbored. When a human joked, "If we were the ones who had created the replicators, the galaxy would be forever screwed," Exor felt like they were stating a fact instead of making a humorous statement. Those harmless jokes were like needles in his eyes, for someone who possessed a knowledge denied even to the humans themselves. A truth so terrifying, it had eclipsed all joy from his life. The ultimate weapon was not the antimatter-propelled device, as the galaxy believed, but the human mind itself. Exor's contemplations were interrupted by a summons. The growing Federation sought his expertise in establishing safeguards against future threats. Treading carefully, he offered his insights, always mindful of the fragile balance between revealing too much and withholding vital information. As the deliberations progressed, Exor observed the humans with a mixture of fascination and dread. Their enthusiasm, their curiosity, and their boundless creativity were both a source of wonder and a harbinger of potential calamity. He found himself constantly torn between admiration for their ingenuity and the overwhelming desire to curb their ambitions, lest they inadvertently unleash something beyond their control. The formation of the Galactic Federation was a delicate process, fraught with political maneuvering and competing interests. Exor navigated these treacherous waters with the skill of a seasoned diplomat, his influence growing by the cycle. Yet, beneath the veneer of his public persona, a deep-seated anxiety festered. As the new interstellar government solidified, Exor's role became pivotal. He was tasked with overseeing the development of the Federation's defense systems, a responsibility he both relished and dreaded. On one hand, he could ensure that the appropriate safeguards were in place, limiting the potential for catastrophic mistakes. On the other, he wrestled with the knowledge that he alone possessed the truth about the human's capabilities, a truth he dared not reveal, lest it shatter the fragile peace. Exor's ascent to power was not without its challenges. Rival factions, suspicious of his motives, sought to undermine his authority. The humans, in particular, viewed him with a mixture of gratitude and distrust, aware of his past disdain for their species. Navigating these political currents required a delicate balance, one Exor maintained with the precision of a master craftsman. In the rare moments of solitude, Exor would retreat to his private quarters, the weight of his secret a constant companion. He would replay the fateful meeting with the humans, searching for any missed clues, any opportunity to have prevented this outcome. But the truth remained immutable. The humans' potential for destruction was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. As the Federation solidified its control over the galaxy, Exor found himself at the center of a web of intrigue and power. His counsel was sought by rulers and scientists alike, his expertise in both technology and strategy making him an indispensable asset. Yet beneath the veneer of his success, a sense of unease lingered, a nagging feeling that the true threat to the galaxy's hard-won peace lay not in the replicators, but in the very species he had once dismissed as primitive. Exor's dilemma was a Gordian knot of his own making. To reveal the truth would shatter the fragile unity of the Federation, potentially unleashing a cataclysmic conflict that would make the replicator war pale in comparison. To remain silent was to condemn the galaxy to a future where the human's boundless potential could be wielded with catastrophic consequences. The weight of this decision pressed upon him, a burden that grew heavier with each passing cycle. As the new era of peace and prosperity unfolded, Exor found himself at a crossroads, torn between the desire to protect the galaxy and the need to preserve the hard-won stability that had been so painstakingly constructed. The fate of the cosmos hung in the balance, and Exor alone held the key to unlocking its future. The burden of knowledge. The Galactic Federation flourished in the aftermath of the replicator's annihilation, a testament to the resilience and cooperation of the once warring species. Exor's influence within this new interstellar government continued to grow, his expertise and strategic insight proving invaluable as the fledgling Union solidified its control over the cosmos. The humans, once viewed with disdain and dismissal, now stood at the pinnacle of galactic society, their role in the replicator's defeat celebrated and revered. Exor's own rise to prominence mirrored the humans' ascent, his counsel sought after by rulers and scientists alike. Yet, the burden he carried, the terrible truth about the true nature of the human's weapon, was a weight that grew heavier with each passing cycle. Amidst the flurry of diplomatic engagements and technological deliberations, Exer found himself increasingly isolated, haunted by the knowledge that the galaxy's fragile peace rested upon a foundation of deception. The humans' boundless creativity and ingenuity, once dismissed as the ramblings of a primitive species, had proven to be a double-edged sword, a power that could just as easily bring about the galaxy's salvation as it could its ultimate downfall. As the Federation solidified its control, Exer's role in overseeing the development of its defense systems became ever more critical. He navigated these treacherous waters with the skill of a seasoned diplomat, constantly torn between the desire to protect the cosmos and the need to preserve the hard-won stability that had been so painstakingly constructed. Rival factions, suspicious of Exer's motives, sought to undermine his authority, while the humans, aware of his past disdain for their species, viewed him with a mixture of gratitude and distrust. Maintaining the delicate balance required every ounce of Exer's political acumen, as he carefully balanced revealing just enough information to appease his detractors while withholding the full truth that could shatter the very foundations of the Federation. In the rare moments of solitude, Exer would retreat to his private quarters, the weight of his secret a constant companion. He would replay the fateful meeting with the humans, searching for any missed clues, any opportunity to have prevented this outcome. But the truth remained immutable. The humans' potential for destruction was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Exer's dilemma was a Gordian knot of his own making. To reveal the truth would shatter the fragile unity of the Federation, potentially unleashing a cataclysmic conflict that would make the Replicator War pale in comparison. To remain silent was to condemn the galaxy to a future where the humans' boundless potential could be wielded with catastrophic consequences. The weight of this decision pressed upon him, a burden that grew heavier with each passing cycle. As the new era of peace and prosperity unfolded, Exer found himself at a crossroads, torn between the desire to protect the galaxy and the need to preserve the hard-won stability that had been so painstakingly constructed. The fate of the cosmos hung in the balance, and Exer alone held the key to unlocking its future. In the rare moments of solitude, Exer would retreat to his private quarters, the weight of his secret a constant companion. He would replay the fateful meeting with the humans, searching for any missed clues, any opportunity to have prevented this outcome. But the truth remained immutable. The humans' potential for destruction was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Exer's dilemma was a Gordian knot of his own making. To reveal the truth would shatter the fragile unity of the Federation, potentially unleashing a cataclysmic conflict that would make the Replicator War pale in comparison. To remain silent was to condemn the galaxy to a future where the humans' boundless potential could be wielded with catastrophic consequences. The weight of this decision pressed upon him, a burden that grew heavier with each passing cycle. As the new era of peace and prosperity unfolded, Exer found himself at a crossroads, torn between the desire to protect the galaxy and the need to preserve the hard-won stability that had been so painstakingly constructed. The fate of the cosmos hung in the balance, and Exer alone held the key to unlocking its future. In the rare moments of solitude, Exer would retreat to his private quarters, the weight of his secret a constant companion. He would replay the fateful meeting with the humans, searching for any missed clues, any opportunity to have prevented this outcome. But the truth remained immutable. The humans' potential for destruction was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Exer's dilemma was a Gordian knot of his own making. To reveal the truth would shatter the fragile unity of the Federation, potentially unleashing a cataclysmic conflict that would make the Replicator War pale in comparison. To remain silent was to condemn the galaxy to a future where the humans' boundless potential could be wielded with catastrophic consequences. The weight of this decision pressed upon him, a burden that grew heavier with each passing cycle. As the new era of peace and prosperity unfolded, Exer found himself at a crossroads, torn between the desire to protect the galaxy and the need to preserve the hard-won stability that had been so painstakingly constructed. The fate of the cosmos hung in the balance, and Exer alone held the key to unlocking its future. In the rare moments of solitude, Exer would retreat to his private quarters, the weight of his secret a constant companion. He would replay the fateful meeting with the humans, searching for any missed clues, any opportunity to have prevented this outcome. But the truth remained immutable. The humans' potential for destruction was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Exer's dilemma was a Gordian knot of his own making. To reveal the truth would shatter the fragile unity of the Federation, potentially unleashing a cataclysmic conflict that would make the Replicator War pale in comparison. To remain silent was to condemn the galaxy to a future where the humans' boundless potential could be wielded with catastrophic consequences. The weight of this decision pressed upon him, a burden that grew heavier with each passing cycle. As the new era of peace and prosperity unfolded, Exer found himself at a crossroads, torn between the desire to protect the galaxy and the need to preserve the hard-won stability that had been so painstakingly constructed. The fate of the cosmos hung in the balance, and Exor alone held the key to unlocking its future.